All right, everybody. It is Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News and the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard podcast on the Believe Network. This is Talkin Ball post-game live from MetLife Stadium. Another loss, a ninth straight loss, ties the Giants' franchise record. Only the third time in a single season the Giants have lost 9 in a row. This was 35-14. Baltimore Ravens. You saw it. Lamar Jackson throws 5 touchdown passes while the Giants put their fourth quarterback of the season on the field, Tim Boyle, after Tommy DeVito suffers a concussion. Hope Tommy's okay. Did see him walk out of the stadium under his own power. And obviously, a huge part of this story is another airplane flying over MetLife Stadium before this game with a more direct message. Last week, it was fix this dumpster fire directed at John Mara. This week, it was Mr. Mara enough. Basically, we're going to keep doing this until you fire everyone. Fire everyone. That was the directive from the airplane flying over MetLife Stadium today. So now, as bad as it was in the 70s in 1978, now 2024 has 1978 beaten by a full airplane. And John Mara was here watching it all, taking it all in. Joe Shane, Brian Daboll. Daboll looking like a coach on the ropes, sounding like someone who is basically just going to keep doing his job until he's told not to. Said 4 times in answer to 4 different questions about the airplane, going to control what we can control. That's going to be his message. Darius Slayton had an interesting thing to say in the locker room post-game. Was a little bit surprised by this comment, but I'll relay it to you. Obviously, it's noteworthy. He said he doesn't think there will be any changes to this staff. He said, I don't see it happening with this staff. It seems like everyone's going to be here. It just doesn't feel like there's going to be any changes made, which is fine. I don't think there needs to be any. He said he understands fan frustration, but he thinks the roster is in a pretty good place and they just need to add a couple pieces. Having a hard time wrapping my head around those comments. I would agree with Slayton that it appears, based on how the Giants have been keeping their heads down and how they've been acting, with John Mara not commenting on any of this, with Brian Daboll doing his best not to entertain any of it. It seems like they're doing their best to at least get to the end of the season. Remember, John Mara said we're not going to be making any changes in season, and then saying I don't anticipate making any changes after the season. So leaving the door open to those changes after the season, but vowing not to make a call until then. So it's possible they're just getting themselves to that point, and then they're going to go from there. There's also a chance that Darius Slayton, as a voice of the locker room, a veteran, a guy who's going to be a free agent soon, who's going to want to have a market, rather than come off like a coach killer. And listen, the Giants and Daboll have named him their man of the year candidate as well. So just like Saquon Barkley last year, like Barkley was saying a lot of nice and diplomatic things last year when he didn't have to, but because he was speaking for the team and trying to demonstrate, for his teammates that he could help them keep it together, get to the end of the season, and then also go in to hopefully a lucrative free agent market and capitalize there. It's possible Slayton's doing what he does best, which is saying the right things, being the good soldier, and letting it be somebody else's problem at the end of the year. That is essentially kind of what he said during the week when he said, he thinks that Daboll's done okay. He said that he thinks that a lot of things that have happened have been out of Daboll, the coach's control. And then he said, but I'm a free agent after this, so they can do whatever they want. We'll see. So maybe this is a little bit of an overcorrection, but noteworthy comments, obviously, from a leader in the locker room, for sure. Talked to some guys, down in the dumps. Guys are obviously honest about how much this sucks, about how this is no fun to go through at all. Some stats that just jump out as totally insane. Tim Boyle's touchdown pass to Malik Neighbors was the Giants' first touchdown pass since November 3rd, when Daniel Jones connected with Chris Manhertz against Washington. And Malik Neighbors' touchdown catch, his first touchdown catch since September 22nd. So some things that really jump out about how bad the offensive output has been and how tough it has been for the Giants to even get in the end zone and have a competent NFL offense here in 2024. Tommy DeVito concussion. Boyle becomes the fourth quarterback to play for the Giants this season. And if you remember last year, the Giants had to play three different quarterbacks: Daniel Jones, Tyrod Taylor, Tommy DeVito. This year, it's been Daniel Jones, Tommy DeVito, Drew Lock, and Tim Boyle. And Boyle actually became the third Giants quarterback to have to play in the last 4 weeks. Because remember, DeVito started the first game after Jones got cut and requested his release against the Bucs. He was too hurt to play the next game on Thanksgiving against Dallas. Drew Lock started that game and the next game against the Saints. He took 35 combined hits in those two games and then was too hurt to play in this game. DeVito resumed as the starter and then didn't make it to halftime, sustains a concussion. Interesting moment where Brian Daboll post-game was asked about when DeVito got dinged up. And I want to see that play again when he got hit by Matabuke, because the Ravens defensive lineman was called for roughing the passer. He was called for roughing the passer on that play, as I get interrupted here by some of the other hardworking media members. And on that play, on one of the replays I showed, it almost looked like DeVito's hands went up in a fencing position at first, but I need to see it again, because that's obviously dangerous and usually obvious telltale sign of something that has happened and that needs to be looked at. You would have thought something like that would have been radioed down and spot checked. So I want to go back and see that. They did later take Wan'Dale Robinson out of the game to check him for a concussion, and then he came back in and that got radioed down from up top. So I'm looking to kind of review the film and see what happened there. But it was interesting that Daboll noted that he was the one who noticed something off with Tommy DeVito as he was talking to him on the sideline, said something to the trainers, and had DeVito looked at, and not that the trainers had pulled him or noticed anything. So something to file in your back pocket anytime a coach reveals that much about what the Giants are doing with their training staff and their medical, because usually, obviously, those are topics they steer away from. If you notice me looking to my left and right, I have Eagles Steelers on. I have Lions Bills on. I'm going on Damon Amendolara's YouTube show after we do Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard postgame on the Believe Network here on my PL on NFL YouTube channel. I'm going to be going over, joining DA and talking about the whole NFL, Giants. Maybe we'll talk a little Jets. We'll talk some Bills, Lions. We'll talk some Steelers, Eagles. Looking forward to that. So go over and find me on DA's show after this. But so keeping an eye on everything, but obviously the Giants losing their 9th straight, and we're here to talk about what's next, what's coming. I want to tell you everything I found out of the locker room. Has some quotes from Isaiah Simmons about Shedeur Sanders from his and Malik Neighbors' meeting with Shedeur that are interesting. We'll get to that. We'll also do our Estate 98 Giants trivia question, which obviously has become pretty popular as more and more of our Talkin Ballers here on the channel get to try and sample and enjoy Estate 98 and then buy more using our discount code. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Patrick tells everybody, as always, to hit that sub and like button. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Please hit the like button while we are live during this chat as well. That helps generate momentum and tell more Giants and NFL fans that we are here talking ball, talking Giants, and talking NFL. There's a lot to talk about here. We can talk about more than just Giants if you have other questions. Really impressive what we saw from the Ravens today. I was excited to see a team like that in person. Could tell you what I thought of them as well. And on we go. But we are obviously brought to you here. Grateful to be sponsored by MyBookie. This is a sports book where you are going to win money if you tail my picks this season. I don't know how to explain it. I'm not getting them all right. Like today, the Carolina Panthers let me down. But we're doing great on our Pats picks. And today, if you played my Justice Hill props, we suggested a ladder on receiving yards, 23, 33, 43, 53, and over receiving yards and a touchdown, anytime touchdown at plus 450. And he went over all of those, especially on that late touchdown catch from Lamar Jackson, one of his 5 TD passes. And so you would have made buku bucks on that pick. And so always trying to give you guys an edge with MyBookie. Obviously, I'm going to release those picks every week on my social media. You can find me on Instagram, PL on NFL, same as the handle here on YouTube, or you can go over to Twitter or X, P Leonard NYDN, and also on Threads, TikTok, wherever you find me, that's where you're going to find Pat's picks. But here's what you got to do. You got to open your account at MyBookie and use the promo code Pat's Picks. That's PATSPICKS. And you'll get a 50% match on your first deposit of $50 or more, all the way up to $1,000. So that's an extra. If you put $1,000 into your account on that first deposit, you'll get an extra $500 in your account to play around with and make yourself more money. So go to that link in my social media profile, use the Pat's Picks promo code, and get that special deal before it runs out. MyBookie, bet anything, anytime, anywhere. Also brought to you here, of course, by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally have felt a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. Use that Talkin Ball 25 discount code or access it through the QR code on your screen. There it is right there. And you'll get 25% off your first subscribe and save order of Boom Chaga. Boomchaga.com. Start feeling the difference today. And last but not least, brought to you by Estate 98 Coffee, a specialty coffee concentrate perfect for when you want to make a quick cup of coffee and skip the lines. It takes me less than 10 seconds to make a delicious Estate 98 iced or hot coffee. It's great as a mixer for espresso martinis, and each bottle can make up to 16 cups. Go to estate98.com/Talkin Ball to get an exclusive offer for 80% off your first order. Again, that's estate98.com/Talkin Ball. All right. Thank you for everybody who joined early, who jumped in, who has questions and comments in the queue. And Daniel Saint is setting a great example by purchasing a super chat. So if you want your comment or question answered first or addressed immediately, you can purchase a super chat or a super sticker, and I will jump right to it in the queue. So without further ado, we start with Daniel, who pays $5 in and says, can you see ownership keeping Daboll? Unfortunately, I can see them keeping Joe, meaning Joe Shane. Daniel, I can see the Giants making a decision like that to keep them both or keep Daboll or keep Shane, because there have been plenty of examples where I felt like the arrow was pointing obviously one way and they've gone the other. So I certainly can see that. I also think that it would be silly to discount, something like what Darius Slayton said about how he doesn't feel like there's change coming based on what he can feel as a player being in the locker room and what he's seeing. But I do think, and listen, I think Tiki Barber, a Giants great, obviously. Sometimes what he says is, I think, for entertainment purposes. He's in that business, right? WFAN, et cetera. Sometimes as somebody who has a tie and affiliation with the team, you take it with a grain of salt, where he's coming from, for example, in times. I thought it was noteworthy, and I'm not saying this is the reason to make a change. I just thought it was interesting on the CBS game broadcast. Tiki Barber made a comment. I think it was in the third or fourth quarter. He was talking about the product on the field and remembering in the early 2000s when they went from Fossil to Coughlin and how bad it got and how much change they had to end up making. And he eventually turned to now and said, when it gets this bad, this is what happens. And he said that there's not enough talent on the team. So when they play a team like the Baltimore Ravens, they're going to get their butts kicked, I believe is the phrase he used, because they just don't have the same quality of players. He also said that for Daboll, he said, unfortunately, Daboll's problem is that regardless of the fact that even someone like Tiki Barber wants to believe in Brian Daboll. He said that the reality is the product looks terrible on the field on game days. And I thought that was the fairest way that someone who I know and we know, played for the Giants, has been critical of the Giants in the past, but more recently has kind of gotten back in their good graces, it would seem. I thought that was a fair and balanced comment by Tiki to say like that he's somebody who has wanted to and has believed in Daboll at times, but who just watches on the field every week, the penalties, shooting themselves in the foot, their inability to score offensively. Look at their inability to even just keep a single quarterback healthy when they play on the field. I thought that was a reasonable comment to make, and that stood out to me. Daniel, I think, my opinion. I think they need to clean house. I can't say I quite understand the ownership tactic of not responding at all while these planes are flying overhead, while the stadium empties like it did on Sunday. I mean, let me just tell you guys, you always watch for the days that, okay, is the stadium going or are fewer people going to show up? What's it going to look like come Sunday? There were some people here early on. It became very clear very quickly as the Ravens started making plays that there were a lot of empty seats to start the game. And then it became clear that a lot of the people in the stands were Ravens fans. And it was very loud in here when the Ravens were making plays and when they were scoring points and when they had explosive plays. Listen, I have told you guys this for several weeks now. Every one of these losses, I have come out of it feeling like Monday morning could be the morning that everyone gets fired or that the coach gets fired or, I mean, it would not shock me if everyone got fired tomorrow. It wouldn't. I don't know if that's going to happen. No one's told me that. It also wouldn't surprise me at this point if they're just playing out the string to the end of the season and then they're going to make decisions then. I'll just rest on this. I've told you guys this before, but this is what I firmly believe. I've seen enough of these situations and enough losing and enough mismanagement of rosters to be able to say, when it gets this bad, you can't make any more excuses for what it looks like. You can't make any more excuses for, why it's going to get better. It's impossible to stare somebody in the eyes and tell them that this is headed in the right direction. And when it gets to that point, almost all the time, there is sweeping change that occurs. I mean, not to dump on this guy specifically, but like in today's game, for example, Kayvon Thibodeau, okay, Joe Shane. Now, listen, Thibodeau's on the field, so a lot of guys aren't even on the field anymore, so he gets credit for that. But Kayvon Thibodeau in today's game, one assisted tackle in the box score. One assisted tackle. Not sure if he ever came off the field. I mean, I think he played close to all of the game. I mean, that's Joe Shane's first pick, right? His first and second round picks as a general manager have been Kayvon Thibodeau, Evan Neal, Wan'Dale Robinson, Deonte Banks, John Michael Schmitz, Malik Neighbors, and Tyler Nubin. Those have not combined to form a strong, sturdy, and exciting and encouraging foundation for the organization. And I think that's a fair place to start. And the reason why Tiki is citing that with the roster, I think that's part of the reason he's saying that are those kind of stats and information. Brett says the stadium of misfit toys. Hunter says, I hope this is finally the end for Daboll. At this point, every single coach should be fired from top to bottom. Hunter says Mara and Tish must love the plane flying over, 10% of seats filled in the fourth, and the product on the field. Hunter says Giants should pull a page out of the Colts book, fire Daboll, hire as interim head coach Justin Pugh. I haven't heard that recommended yet. That's a unique suggestion. And then remember, was that Kayvon saying that about, was it Jeff Saturday saying that he didn't know who that was when Saturday criticized him? Johnny says, at this point, I'll take Kafka as interim. No way he can be worse than Daboll. In fact, Daniel Jones had his best year with Kafka calling the plays. You can't discount what you just said. You can't discount what you just said. The fact that the best football Daniel Jones played under this regime was when Kafka was calling the plays. No doubt about that. Daniel Hirsch checks in with $20. Thank you so much, Daniel. He says, ownership has ultimately caused a total collapse. They need to save face or long-term damage to this team. Even the stadium in New Jersey makes no sense. Yeah, no, Daniel, it really is. It really does go all the way up to ownership. John Mara's comments in October about wanting to be more patient like his dad was at times because he feels like he hasn't been patient enough. Like, John Mara is not going to sit there and acknowledge, like he's pushed back against the suggestion that ownership meddles, and that's the reason that the Giants have made all these mistakes. And he pushes back against all of that. But he has taken accountability for certain key mistakes and issues eventually. And his comment in late October, that was an allusion. That's him essentially admitting, I screwed up, or I broke promises, or I made decisions with some of these other regimes that I thought at the time were going to point us in the right direction, and they clearly didn't, right? Like that's I think his way of admitting that. And so, it's unavoidable, obviously, whether he's going to admit it or not. It's unavoidable to suggest, or the reality and the fact that the Mara and Tisch families and their management of this team and their inability to make the right hirings, the timing of their firings, their decisions on when to stick, when to pull the plug. It's just all backfired in their face recently. Think about it. They've only lost 9 straight games 3 times in NFL history, or the Giants have, right? So in Giants history, they've only lost 3 straight games in a single season. Sorry, let me say this again, okay? The Giants have only lost 9 straight games 3 times in their franchise history, and they've done it twice in this recent run with John Mara making these hires. They did it once in 2019 under Pat Shurmur, and now they've done it here in 2024 under Brian Daboll. So that tells you about the historic run of ineptitude that the Giants are on right now. And as the Pittsburgh Steelers, what was that? Najee Harris looks like he just coughed something up out of nowhere. That is tough for Pittsburgh. Wow. But so, Daniel, to your point, it does go all the way up to ownership. Now, I push back against the suggestion, like when people say, well, it's not just Daboll and Shane, it's ownership. That makes sense. And of course, yes, they are to blame and culpable and accountable. But that's not a reason not to make changes with the GM and the coach. I don't think it's a one or the other situation when it comes to that. Daniel, thank you so much for that super chat. Steve says, other than riding Accorsi's shoulders, how is it that Chris Mara is still in personnel development, haven't been great in the 22 years he's been here? Chris is a voice in the room. It's ownership family, so they're going to have a say and they're going to be involved. Tim McDonough, obviously, John Mara's nephew as well, heavily involved in personnel. Tim, as John has said consistently, is respected in the scouting world and has a lot of influence in the process and what they've been doing. I would be interested if the Maras were ever going to lean all the way in to their family's operations, then I would be interested in seeing what the Giants would look with Tim McDonough as general manager, right? At this point, like everybody always asks me, if you're going to fire Joe Shane, is it Brandon Brown's turn? No, to me, if you're going to fire Joe Shane, if you're not going out and making that outside hire and you're leaning all the way into who you are, Tim McDonald's the guy. But obviously, Steve, the dynamic of the family interaction and involvement is not going to change. The Maras have pushed back against the blame of the family meddling and suggested that has been overemphasized and unfairly highlighted, and that it has not played as significant a role. I'll just say this. One thing I do want to say on a related note. So it came up today. Darius Slayton was asked if this reminds him of 2021. And, he kind of scoffed and said, no, 2021 was its own beast. We had coaches fired then. People got fired in season, after the season. We had a lot of things going on then that we don't have going on now. And we're just losing. That's the one similarity. And I just want to push back against the idea that certainly, yes, it was a different time. There were different things going on. But I do resent, because this is something that happens a lot when the Giants lose. Everybody always loves to go to some other time in the history and start dumping on someone who's no longer here and pouring dirt on their grave and trying to continue to ruin someone else's reputation and excuse the problems that are happening now by referencing something that was worse at another point. And I think that's really ugly, and I think it's bullshit. And I think that increased discussion about 2021 at this point would be trying to hold up a red flag or a handkerchief and say to the bull, look over here. So, I always think that's ugly stuff. I like to evaluate the here and now. Also, one thing I did want to bring up is you guys do realize that a couple of years ago, when Wink Martindale was the defensive coordinator here in 2022, the Giants beat the Ravens here in MetLife Stadium. They beat them. They weren't just in the game, which is different from this game. They won the game. They won the game by forcing 2 turnovers from Lamar Jackson down the stretch in the fourth quarter. One of those turnovers gave them the ball back, I believe, at the 13-yard line. Saquon Barkley scores the go-ahead touchdown. Julian Love, Kayvon Thibodeau. Kayvon Thibodeau making big plays a couple years ago with a different defensive staff to help them beat Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. So interesting that after the Giants have a coaching exodus last year, a lot of friction, a lot of problems with the management, the dysfunction, the finger pointing, the blame game, that now with a different staff, Daboll takes over play calling, has an extensive search to try to bring in someone to help fix the defense, ends up landing on Shane Bowen. Now you play the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson, and you lose 35-14, and it could have been much worse. Lamar Jackson ends up coming out of the game and essentially mercy ruling this version of the Giants. So something I thought that was worth pointing out there. Michael says, hello, Patrick. Thoughts on Daboll as a human? I think Brian Daboll came here from Buffalo having earned a chance to be a head coach off of his work with Josh Allen in Buffalo. And I think that in 2022, his fire and energy and aggressiveness early, along with his and Martindale's game planning, got the Giants off to an unexpectedly hot start and helped get them in the playoffs and help them win a playoff game. And I think at the time it felt like he was setting a positive tone for the team and for the organization. But in the second half of that season, you saw a lot of things sour. I thought that the interpersonal skills and issues that Daboll and the coaching staff had, and it wasn't just Martindale, obviously. Kafka was involved in that. A lot of more people involved in that. Of course, McGahee was fired. Bobby Johnson was fired. But a lot of people, tight ends coach, running backs coach, a lot of people end up leaving of their own accord from that staff. I think the interpersonal skills and abilities of Daboll and the shortcomings there kind of showed up. I don't wish for people to fail. I certainly was excited about the idea that the Giants were in the playoffs and playing a playoff game and winning a playoff game that first season. Doing this job as long as I've been doing it now, seen enough losing. It's time to start covering a winner. Let's go. So, was looking forward to and hopeful for a change to that dynamic. But I think that what I've recognized over the course of these last 2 years, especially, is that without a Josh Allen, it seems like Daboll is overwhelmed. The game management element of it is something that has really reared its head, especially on the penalties and the illegal shifts they keep having, the pre-snap penalties, these unforced errors that keep coming up from them, and then situational football that they've been running. The inability of the Giants to just look like a buttoned up operation. You asked me about Daboll as a human. I think what I've seen is somebody who spends a lot of time on, trying to have good relationships with players. And I think that, there's a lot of conversations and time spent on that. But I think that overall, the way that the program is run and the results on the field, I think that while you hear guys like Darius Slayton say, I don't think change is coming, and I don't think it should, I think that some of those conversations and the time spent in those relationships probably don't reflect on what the bottom line work is that's being done and on the way all of those relationships look around the building and how effective it ends up being when it comes to the bottom line of football and victories. I don't know if that answers your question, but I hope it does. Let's see. Daniel says, Pat, what could give Mr. Mara any confidence that Shane and Daboll are worth keeping? I genuinely don't know, Daniel. I think the one remaining argument that I've seen come up in a couple small areas or corners of the fan base or on the internet is, like I saw somebody today say to me, Pat, they have all these injuries. I mean, they were bad before they had injuries. They've been bad during the injuries. They've been bad after all the injuries. I don't think the injuries are the reason that they've lost games, because they were losing plenty of games before the injuries. I do think that all the injuries they've had have reinforced that the Giants have an injury problem when it comes to year in and year out, their inability to keep their team healthy. This is a huge problem for the Giants. It's a huge problem for them. It's something that they still have not addressed. We heard it blamed last year on strength and conditioning coach, I think. We asked about the training work and injuries, and the first name that came out of the general manager's mouth was Craig Fitzgerald, the guy who's in charge of strength and conditioning. That's not the training room. That's a weird answer. So now Aaron Wellman's here, supposedly to fix everything. I remember Wellman said something interesting when he was first working for the Giants several years ago. I did a story on him, and he said that he doesn't like calling it injury prevention. He likes to call it injury mitigation. Basically saying there are things that you can do that are tried and true that decrease the chances of certain injuries or the likelihood of certain injuries, but that you can't actually fully prevent them. So then that also goes to, how are we preparing people's bodies? How are we, as a Giants organization, judging when it's appropriate to put somebody back on the field? Are we making the right decisions when it comes to how we diagnose injuries like Evan Neal? Are we making the right calls about how long to hold somebody out, whether to put them on IR or not, what positions we're putting them in on the field, whether we're playing an offensive lineman at the wrong spot where he's susceptible to things that his body's not used to, right? There's just a lot of wrinkles to that. So I hope that answers your question. I know I veered in a lot of different directions there. Let's see. All right, we have some new super chats and comments here. I will get to all your guys' comments and questions there. Don't worry. Big Brother Thunder checks in. Thank you, Big Bro. He says, what do you think about Jeff Fisher as the next head coach? No, that would not be my pick. I think Jeff Fisher would be you know, that strikes me more of like a Pat Shurmur type hire of like, let's get an adult in the room, somebody who knows how to manage a full scale program. What is going on with the Detroit Lions getting pasted by the Buffalo Bills right now? Holy cow. Looks like I'm taking a little bit of a bath on some of my picks this week too. Uh-oh. Hopefully everybody played those Justice Hill props. You know, big bro, Jeff Fisher, what do you think about Jeff Fisher? I'd like to hear based on you asking that question. That's an interesting name to bring up. I want to know what you think. I mean, I know Jeff Fisher, obviously the joke is he's famous for being, 9-7, 7-9, 8-8. I mean, he couldn't go 8-8 because there's now 17 games. That's an upside. I don't know, that strikes me as somebody who I don't know what his coordinators would be. If Jeff Fisher was going to be a guy that you were going to bring in, you would want to know who his offensive coordinator was going to be, how he intended to develop a quarterback. I mean, he obviously has pedigree, but I don't know. That would not be my choice. Considering the coaches the Giants have hired in recent years and who they've passed over, who they've hired, who they haven't hired. That would not enervate me as a Giants fan. That's for sure. Bombs away, Jared Goff. Oh, who dropped that? Jameson Williams. All right. Let's see. Next question comes from Joey B. What's up, Joey B? He says, I heard John Mara wanted Daniel Jones, and promised Joe Shane and Daboll they wouldn't be fired if it didn't work out. He would let them go get their quarterback. Is there any truth to that? I know I've heard that floated as speculation, Joey. I don't know that to be true. I definitely remember at the time of their signing Daniel Jones, two things were true. One, and I remember Albert Breer was the one who had the story about the behind the scenes, like here's how the deal got done. Two things he revealed in that story. One was that John Mara was on the phone at some point with Daniel Jones in the final hour of the negotiations as it got up to getting done. And the second one is that Joe Shane was, grinding away with Daniel Jones's agent, finding a way to work it out. So the idea, maybe I'm naive here, but we've asked John Mara about that several times, like that instance. We've asked him about that several times. And he has, I'm going to give John Mara the benefit of the doubt that he's being honest when he has said, like, it wasn't just his decision. Like that, Joe Shane's been running the team. That was his decision. That was their decision. They made that call together as a group, as a duo, as a collaborative group. I mean, you have to admit, it would be a little strange for John to be putting his thumb on the scale of the Daniel Jones contract. And then when he so clearly and obviously in Hard Knocks wants Saquon to stay, to not put his thumb on the scale, right? Like wouldn't you think he would be one way or the other? I don't know. I mean, that's my opinion. So I don't think he would do one or the other. I think he would operate in some sort of consistent way. Like either you're putting your thumb on the scale and you're coloring the way that the general manager and the coach are running the team and making personnel decisions, or you're not. I don't think you're doing one and not the other. Also, like, maybe he didn't mean it, but I mean, I don't think it's revisionist history. I think John Mara said at the owners' meetings when I and others were asking him about it, he welcomed drafting a quarterback in the first round. He also said that, show me, show me a quarterback that we believe is going to be the potential new face of our franchise, draft him and let him and Daniel compete and let the best man win. So, like, Joey, that's one element of this conversation when that comes up that I don't understand. Like, what your question is totally fair, and I appreciate it because it starts a great conversation. That's definitely happening in the Giants fan base. the idea they haven't had their chance to draft their own quarterback already, I don't see or agree with that, because they did, right? Bo Nix, J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix Jr. Who knows if they try harder to trade up to number 3, do the Patriots go for it? Would that price have been worth it based on, I mean, listen, Giants players and people around this team, when they talk about what the heck is this going to look like next year, the one unquestionable answer that everybody knows is, well, we know that quarterback room ain't going to look the same, right? Like that's for sure. So, Joe, what you're saying is possible, and I'm not going to say it's not possible, right? But I don't know that to be true. I don't think that John Mara would be putting his thumb on the scale for one result and then not for the other. That strikes me as like he would probably be doing one or the other, is what I believe. But, I could be wrong. Milan Fan Club San Diego, what's up? Says $5 super chat. Thank you, Milan. Says, what do you think about the Giants creating an office of football operations and hiring a VP for it? The duties are handled between Mara and Shane. Office of Football Operations and hiring a VP. Milan, could you expand on that? Like exactly what you would want that to look like? It sounds like you're suggesting creating some sort of buffer or complement to the general manager and owner. I think I could be wrong. I don't want to put words in your mouth. It sounds like what you're partially describing is that from your vantage point, it doesn't feel like Mara and Shane are, different enough as entities when it comes to these major decisions. I don't know, which would be an interesting interpretation and evolution, considering we all watched Hard Knocks where the owner wanted one thing to happen and the GM did another, right? So we know that that's not 100% true, because we know that we have visual evidence documented that the general manager will, go against the grain when it comes to, making a big time decision. So, all right. Going to take a quick break here to mention our sponsors. And Milan, if you dump more in the chat about your description of what that looks like, I'll get more into that for sure. Thank you. But want to remind you guys, we are sponsored by MyBookie, and leading out of this sponsor break, we're going to do the Estate 98 Giants trivia question. So stay tuned. One of you is going to win a free bottle of Estate 98 coffee, as the Eagles, Steelers, and Bills, Lions are both in and entering the fourth quarter. Steelers look like they're down by a couple scores. The Lions are trying to fight back, but they can't stop a nosebleed right now against the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen. So 3 sponsors here I want to tell you about real quick. We're brought to you by MyBookie Sportsbook. Go to mybookie.ag. Use my promo code PATSPICKS, that's PATSPICKS, and get a 50% match on your first deposit of $50 or more, all the way up to $1,000. So if you put $1,000 in your account on that first deposit using my code, you're going to get $500 for free in your account. Use that. Play my Pats picks. Play my props. Been doing well on the daily news picks. I pick every game for the daily news every week. Believe it usually shows up in the Thursday or Friday New York Daily News. And then I make my picks 3 or 4 games against the spread. Pat's picks going up on Saturday on social media everywhere you can find, as well as my Giants sprinkle. And today we hammered Justice Hill's receiving yards, went all the way up over 53 yards. We hit all of those steps along the way, and the Justice Hill plus 450 anytime touchdown. So you're welcome. Hope you guys played that. Hope you bet it. Bet at MyBookie, whatever you like to play, those props, the overs, the unders, against the spread, straight up on the money line. MyBookie, bet anything, anytime, anywhere. Also brought to you by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants, and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally have felt a post-workout like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. Use that Talkin Ball 25 code or access it through the QR code on your screen. They're right here, Talkin Ball 25, QR code there. And do it on the subscribe and save option, and you'll get 25% off that first order. So that's subscribe and save, one bag, 25% off, costs you only $30 for that bag. And you don't have to stay subscribed. You can cancel a subscription right away. It won't tie you in. There'll be no penalty for canceling. I don't think you will, though. I think you'll like the product. Boomchaga.com. Start feeling the difference. And leading into our Giants trivia question, Talking Ball with Pat Leonard is brought to you by Estate 98 Coffee, a specialty coffee concentrate, perfect for when you want to make a quick cup of coffee and skip the lines. It takes me less than 10 seconds to make a delicious Estate 98 iced or hot coffee. It's great as a mixer for espresso martinis, and each bottle can make up to 16 cups. Go to estate98.com/Talkin Ball to get an exclusive offer for 80% off your first order. That's estate98.com/Talkin Ball. All right, time for our Estate 98 Giants trivia question of the week here on the Believe Network and on the Talkin Ball post-game live show here with Pat Leonard of the New York Daily News, NFL columnist, Giants beat writer, podcast host, and analyst here on the Believe Network. Probably saw me on Sports Final with Bruce Beck last week. Who would have known at that point that I was only talking about the first of 2 planes in 2 weeks to be flying over MetLife Stadium, telling John Mara to blow it all up. All right, here is your Giants trivia question. It's straightforward, and I think someone should get it relatively quickly, but I don't know how quickly you're going to be able to look it up, so be interested to see who the diehards are. Okay, Malik Neighbors today. So here's how we do the chat, by the way. Here's how we do the question. I asked the trivia question. Your job is to put the answer, the correct answer, in the comment section. The first correct answer in the comment section is going to get a free bottle of Estate 98 coffee mailed to their house, their apartment, their P.O. box, wherever. So I'm going to ask the question. The first correct answer, I'll call you out, and you will then direct message me on Instagram your address or P.O. box, and I will have a free bottle of Estate 98 coffee mailed to you. All right. The question is, Malik Neighbors, Giants rookie receiver, he had 82 yards today and a touchdown. So that increased his season total yardage to 901 receiving yards. That moved him into second place on the Giants rookie receiving yards list behind only Odell Beckham Jr.'s 1,305 a decade ago in 2014. Who did Malik Neighbors pass to get into second place all time for Giants rookie receiving yards? So there's someone else who was second behind Beckham prior to today. Malik Neighbors now with 901 yards passed this Giants player for second most Giants receiving yards in Giants history. Let's see. So Diamond says Hakeem Nicks. No. Giants Chronicle says Slayton. No. Dan says Steve Smith. No. Talk with Zoe says Amani Toomer. No. Chronicle says Hakeem Nicks. Nope. No, not Amani Toomer. Not Victor Cruz. Looks like Hunter Keller, who has won, I believe, twice so far, is going to win yet another bottle of Estate 98 coffee. He tried a couple times, didn't get the name quite spelled correctly, Hunter, but just kidding. No problem. You're dropping Jeremy Shockey's name in there. That is the correct answer. It is Jeremy Shockey, the tight end. 894 receiving yards in 2002. So now it's Beckham 1305, Neighbors 901 and counting, Shockey 894. So yes, the correct answer that of who he passed for second all time on Giants receiving yards is Jeremy Shockey. Nice work there, Hunter. Nice work. Luann, I don't know if you had that answer in before or after I noted that, but feel free, Luann, because you've been a loyal listener and follower and participant in Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard. If you direct message me at my Instagram account, PL on NFL, Hunter and Luann direct message me there, PL on NFL. Send me a direct message. Send me your address or PO box, whatever it is, and I will get a free bottle of Estate 98 coffee mailed out to you. Mello, if you haven't tried Estate 98 as well, you're welcome to dish out your address or PO box to my Instagram. It's the holiday season. It's the Christmas season. It's the time for giving. Estate 98 coming right to your door. DMs at Instagram, PL on NFL. That is the Estate 98 Giants trivia question of the day. Hunter, I do know your address, so no need to send it again. But well done on the Giants trivia. You are a true diehard and talking baller. Thank you so much for your participation. All right. Before I go back up to the queue, I'm going to read because Milan is further explaining his comment. So to remind everybody, his initial comment was, Pat, what do you think about the Giants creating an office of football operations and hiring a VP for it? The duties are handled between Mara and Shane. I asked him to expand on that so I can answer. He says, yes, create a buffer between the GM and owner. Hire a football person to run it and act as a conduit between Mara and Shane and help the GM avoid stupid decisions like letting Saquon go. This office also allows the GM to have a clarifying conversation about the vision of the owners, and it shields Mara from the meddling accusations. Milan, that's an interesting idea. I think if you're describing an office, though, that by creating it and by giving it some power, you're going to enable it to have, basically. So look at the Chicago Bears right now, where you have the McCaskies, and then you have Kevin Warren, and then you have Ryan Poles, and then, now it's Thomas Brown, whoever it's going to be. It was Eberflus before as head coach. That buffer can be dangerous depending on who you hire, because like in the Kevin Warren situation, wow, we have some coaching issues on the Eagles sideline. Looked like Sirianni with one of the assistant coaches getting in each other's face. Oh boy, man, the Eagles are not boring. I'll tell you that. They are not boring. The NFL is not boring. All these teams. So, Milan, the danger with that is, I think the key to what you said is hire a football person to run it, because if you end up with a guy like Kevin Warren, who's more of a businessman running it, then you have a non-football person involved in football decisions, and essentially all they're doing is protecting ownership, right? So I think what you're suggesting might be a good idea for ownership if they want to protect themselves and create a buffer for themselves. I think that is a sound option to put on the table. If you were working for the Giants in public relations, in marketing, in the football office, and you were trying to figure out ways to insulate people from blame and also maybe protect them from themselves when it comes to making the wrong call or sticking their nose where they don't belong, I can see the value in that. I do think too many cooks in the kitchen is dangerous. Football is, what's the best way to describe it? There's a lot of nuance and detail to football, especially when it comes to the X's and O's of the game, execution. And it's not a simple game by any means, but it isn't rocket science to the point. Like, I'm not saying it's easy. What I'm saying is you want a streamlined process that does not create any sort of bogged down, over detail, over analysis. You don't want to overload the process, the program, or the players with details and additional layers of hierarchy or bureaucracy that get in the way of just, creating and producing results, if that makes sense. So I would be wary of wading too far into that, but I would explore it, if that's a fair answer. That's a really good question. That's one of our better questions we've had here in a while. Daniel says, Daniel, thanks for the super chat here. Any more thoughts on not bringing in Russell Wilson? This whole season could have been avoided and jobs saved. Unforgivable if Wilson would have signed. Yeah, no, Daniel, that's a great point. I mean, I think now, okay, to Joe's question earlier and to your question now, is it possible that Russell Wilson wasn't signed because, like, is it possible he came in and said, well, you need to make me the starter to sign me, and that John Mara got involved in that and said, well, we can't actually do that? I don't know that. But like, I could see, in other words, I don't think it's a reasonable excuse that they haven't had a chance to draft their own quarterback yet. They have. But I could see a world where ownership got involved in, well, we can't guarantee that to him. No, right? But I'm not saying that happened. I don't know what happened specifically with the Russell Wilson situation. I thought it was, oh boy, Saquon putting some moves on people here. I thought it was very, hey, how you doing? I might go till 8 o'clock if that's okay. Is that all right? Thanks, because I'm doing an additional show after this. All right, thank you. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, we burn the midnight oil here to give you guys football information, to talk ball here on the Believe Network and on the PL on NFL YouTube channel on the Believe Network. By the way, if you're listening on audio instead of watching us on YouTube, thank you very much. You know, thanks for wherever you're listening or watching. We really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. I'm grateful for all the support and everybody's participation. I don't take it for granted. I love doing this. It really is what I love the most right now. And there's more to come. I have a lot of exciting announcements coming about our show, about what we have in store, our plans, and really excited. So that said, back to our conversation here. So Daniel's question was, any more thoughts on Russell Wilson? The whole season could have been avoided and jobs saved. Unforgivable if he would have signed. Yeah, so I think that the signing of Daniel Jones did not preclude the signing of Russell Wilson if they had judged that Russell Wilson would be meaningfully better. As far as I know and we know, Joe Schoen running the Giants did not judge that Wilson would be that meaningfully better to bring him in and guarantee him a spot over Daniel Jones. That was obviously a mistake. You know, it's too convenient, and I'm agreeing with you, Daniel. It's too convenient for excuses to be made for the GM and the coach and for the operation that they did not, like, all of these different mistakes that they've made, they can't all be explained away with a nuance that puts them in a favorable light. Like, it's silly. It's like when they went to the playoffs in 2022, I covered them as honestly and directly and transparently as I could. And I pointed out the things they were doing well. And I pointed out some of the concerns that I was seeing as well, kind of signs of what was possibly to come, which obviously came to fruition. But at that point, you have to give them a semblance of and a certain amount of credit for doing what they did with the roster that they had, right? Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, even though there were plenty of other guys who could have won Coach of the Year, they earned the praise they received in the sense that the bottom line was no one expected them to win 9. They won 9 and they won a playoff game. And so, right, the glass is closer to half full than half empty, in fairness, at that point, just because they earned that and that's what it was. So now parsing the nuance of one of the worst Giants teams ever and then suggesting that all of these different factors and mistakes that occurred to get them to this point, parsing all the details and making excuses left and right for this quarterback signing and this quarterback not being drafted and then not having a chance to do this. And maybe ownership was too involved in that. It's like, how many years do you go by before you just look at the final product on the field and you say, however we got here, the people who were running it got us here and it was wrong and it wasn't good enough and we need to do better. And that means hiring new people. So that's where I eventually go. Thank you. Mello checks in with $5. Hey, Mello, thank you. Mello says, how do you feel about Mike Vrabel as a head coach replacement for Daboll? Vrabel's a strong personality. I think he's a good coach. I've seen him make situational mistakes, including against the Giants when Daboll got that first win of his first game coaching the Giants. Vrabel made some key mistakes in that game to help let the Giants back in it. So I don't think he's perfect. I do think he sets a hard-nosed, nasty, physical tone. I think that the Giants are very much missing that identity. I think they are missing one thing. I'm going to do something bigger on this, and I'm going to bring this up again. But one thing I don't understand when it comes to talent evaluation and the way the Giants have assembled their team and their roster and the way that this front office evaluates. If you have hard-nosed, tough players on your team, or if you're scouting hard-nosed, tough players, to me, drafting or signing or adding, you can't prioritize things over guys who are just, fierce and tough and, who are going to be determined to put the guy across from them in the dirt. That is what you need in football. The Giants don't have enough of that. They've lost so much of that. And, it's interesting. Guys like Saquon and Julian Love and, Leonard Williams and Xavier McKinney and some of these guys. Wow. Buffalo Bills return it. Oh my goodness. Mac Hollins almost returned an onside kick by the Lions for a touchdown there for the Bills. What a play. But Mello, I do think Vrabel would be, if you hired him, he would see that. He would walk in and Micah McFadden is a player like that. They drafted him here. Joe Schoen drafted him. McFadden plays nasty. Now he's got shortcomings, right? He's a late round pick. There's some physical talents or shortcomings there for sure. But, if you have enough guys on your team who are just, they're always going to win their one-on-one battles physically because they're just not going to lose. And they're going to try to embarrass the guy in front of them. John Feliciano, Nick Gates, those guys, they helped make that 2022 team what it was because they were nasty. They were nasty players in a good way. You need more of that. I think Vrabel could bring that. I would be interested what the Vrabel-Schoen dynamic would be, because Vrabel is a really strong personality. And I know, obviously, in Tennessee, there was friction with front office and general manager there. So, I think that's something to keep an eye on as well. Listen, you're not just looking for a head coach, but if you're retaining Joe Schoen and you're bringing in Mike Vrabel, does that work? Obviously, Joe Schoen has a good friend in Ryan Cowden, who's in the Giants front office here. And Cowden knows Vrabel well, and I believe was interim GM there before Vrabel ended up out. You also have Shane Bowen here. Not quite sure. If you're hiring Vrabel also, you're essentially saying you want to retain Shane Bowen because that's his guy as defensive coordinator. Is that what you're doing? I don't know. So I think he's clearly the best, most experienced head coach in this hiring cycle. I mean, that very much is true. So I'm not suggesting that I'm not suggesting that you don't interview him, that you don't entertain it, and that you don't want it. That's for sure. So good question. Just checking one thing, working the phones here. 1 second. Thank you guys for your patience and for being here on Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard, post-game live here from MetLife Stadium. We are here after the Giants' 35-14 loss to the Baltimore Ravens. The Giants, in true Brian Daboll fashion, throwing the ball around late to try to make the scoreboard look better, getting a late touchdown on the board, and making the final score look a little bit better than it could have. Lamar Jackson coming out of the game early, or else the score could have been much worse. Let's see some noteworthy stats here. By the way, shout out to Steve Mariucci, the former NFL head coach on NFL Network prior to the game. Mooch predicted that Tim Boyle would play and throw for, I think he said 128 yards. Sure enough, Tim Boyle comes into the game and throws for 123 yards, a touchdown and an interception. So great call there by Mariucci. Devin Singletary got more work in this game. The running back that, after not paying Saquon Barkley, Joe Schoen gave $5 million a year and now is not used much at all. Tyrone Tracy had at least one drop today. I think he just had the one drop. But Tracy had 10 carries. Singletary had 8. Singletary also had a touchdown. And Singletary actually had 3 catches for 16 yards. Neighbors had 10 catches on 14 targets for 82 yards and a touchdown. Wan'Dale Robinson, 4 catches, 38 hits, 38 yards, took several big hits. Giants special teams was a disaster in this game on the coverage teams. Gave up a huge kick return at the start of the game, then gave up a big punt return to set up the Ravens' first touchdown. They also had, I believe, 2 penalties on different returns as well. So really bad stuff. All right, let's keep going here. Going to go all the way up to about 7:30. So we have at least 13 minutes left. And then I'm going to jump over to, and I just shared this on my social media, but I'm going to jump over to Damon Amendolara's YouTube page, and we're going to do NFL talk, and he's going live over there. So I'll still be live on YouTube, but instead of here on PL on NFL YouTube channel and on the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard podcast on the Believe Network, I'm going to be going over to DA Live tonight. I believe the show goes from 7 o'clock now to about 8:15 p.m., and you can find me over there. So once we stop going live here, please switch over and join me if you want to keep hearing NFL talk, Giants talk. Really excited for that. All right. Thanks for everybody who has dropped the super chats in the queue. Remember, if you want your comment or question answered first, purchase that super chat or super sticker. I'll jump on it. If not, I'll just keep going down the queue. I'm going to try to get to as many things as possible. If you have something that repeated a question or comment that I've seen before, I might skip it just to try to get to as many as I can before I have to sign off and join DA. All right. MJ says, Pat, why is this your title of your video? It's the least important thing what some random fan thinks. You will pretend it's the overwhelming sentiment of the fans. It's not. MJ, it is noteworthy that a fan is flying a plane over the stadium telling John Mara to fire everyone. I believe that speaks for a lot of the fan base. It doesn't speak for all of the fan base, but it does speak for a lot of the fan base, from my opinion and my vantage point. Also, I think that what speaks also is it's part of a whole, right? So all the empty seats, all the Ravens fans here feeling like they were outnumbering the Giants fans. The only thing that a lot of Giants fans are rooting for now is for the team to keep losing for the number 1 pick. I mean, it is so bad that John Mara is being accused and the Giants are being accused of tanking. And that's the last thing he ever wants. Daniel says, I can't see them keeping their jobs. At this point, anyone else would at least do a change to give the fans some hope they get lucky and find the right duo to run this team. Killer Cam jokes. Stop paying for the planes, Pat. It doesn't get you that great of a story. Killer Cam, you know what's cool though is I went to the authorities and I said, hey, I need a pilot's license, but I only need it for a month. And so they expedited my process, my training. I only had to go up a couple times because I told them, listen, I'm just going to be flying in a circle, around one stadium. I mean, it's not like I'm going to be going all over the place. I don't even need to leave the tri-state area. So it's pretty easy to get that pilot's license. Daniel says, Pat, you were right from early in the season that this regime should be fired. I see the other best writers saying they should go now. Stick with me, Daniel. And listen, I hope to be right on the other end of it at some point sooner than later. I hope that we get to a point where I'm able to be the one who accurately predicts for you and for others that that this is heading in the right direction, or something is in a positive way because, or to tell you something is coming, whether it's a draft pick, whether it's a hiring or a firing, and the way that they intend to improve themselves. I think that all of that is something that I work very hard to get to the accurate information on. And I promise you this, when I asked Brian Daboll in week 2, when they fell to 0-2 in Washington about his job security, it was not born out of desire that he's fired, wanting that to happen, wanting the season to go off the rails. The season going off the rails, like if you want to consider me somebody who's selfish, it's bad for business. Like the month of October, a lot of people were just completely apathetic. A lot of people in October became completely apathetic about the Giants because they stunk and everyone knew the season was already over. That is not what somebody wants. I asked that question because I had heard that if the Giants started, 0-4, 0-5, 0-6, it might happen right away as far as a coaching change. That Daboll and that they were on that kind of hot seat coming off of this dysfunction of last year. Everybody is so quick to forget how bad last year went and how the coach was so much of a part of it. The general manager on the headsets monitoring the dynamic of the coaches and the finger pointing and the blaming, all that. So I worked very hard at that information. So listen, I'll be wrong about things. I was wrong today that the Carolina Panthers were going to win outright and cover, right? So I'll be wrong about stuff for sure. And I don't know if you guys remember this or saw this, but in the first year of the Daboll Shane regime, I picked them to win 3 games that year, and they went to the playoffs. And so I put a clown mask on myself on TikTok with a filter, and I did a video saying that I was a clown because I had predicted them to win 3 games, and here they are going to the freaking playoffs. So listen, the more you're in this, the more you have to realize it's sports. It means something to people. It means a lot to people. And it certainly drags things down when there's this much despair and this much frustration. But let's not take ourselves too seriously. Let's try to diagnose this, try to make it better, try to help the Giants out of it with discussing what's the best way to go. Joel says dumpster fire at its best. Chronicle says at this point, no other option to fire Daboll. Unfortunately, just seems to be terrible at managing games and isn't even competing. Joe Schoen, however, I could see a world where he stays. However, I wouldn't be surprised to see Joe go because this team is the team he put together. Then there's injuries have killed us, but where we were bad before those two, I think we need to start fresh. All fair points there. Who do I think they should pursue as new GM and head coach, Daniel says? I would want an experienced GM, and then, Vrabel's a good coach to start with as far as interviewing goes. I think Ben Johnson's a guy that I would be pursuing heavily based on his work with quarterbacks and the offense over there in Detroit. The general manager circuit, honestly, I think Borgonzi from the Chiefs, you want to look at that tree. I would want to know what the Chiefs are doing and thinking, and, how could that blueprint be applied here? I think that even though Joe Schoen turned over the process of the Giants operations, I think that it's very clear that that process is not functionally sound. And so I think you want to explore, whether it's somebody coming from Detroit, somebody coming from Kansas City, I'm not saying hire John Dorsey, but I would like to have that conversation. You need to take a full kind of accounting of how the best teams in the league are managing themselves, handling themselves, and working as front offices and as operations. But I'll be honest with you, Daniel, I don't have a GM candidate in mind right now, like a one that I'm going to tell you this guy and only this guy. And, I think some of the top coaching candidates are more obvious. I've said this before. I'll say it again. It's a shame that Brian Flores has that lawsuit against the Giants because I do feel like I'd be interested in that. J-Fed, so is Pat Leonard bankrolling the plane? Yeah, you'd be surprised how cheap it was, too. Obviously kidding. Johnny says, what concerns me about Shane is that he seems like a petty person. We can't have a GM who has no strategy in evaluating talent other than who hurts his feelings and the market he has no clue on. Pretty perceptive there, Johnny, that he makes things personal. Let's see. Juan says, John Mara better hire experienced people or these types of seasons will continue to pile up. Yeah, like if you hire a Ben Johnson, you're going for like the quarterback difference that you're trying to make, and I see that. But I agree with you that all in all, you do want to have more experience. You don't want to go in like you did here with Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, where you're bringing in guys who've never done the job before, and then you're living through some growing pains at first, but then you realize maybe they're not growing pains. Maybe these guys aren't good at it because they've never done it, and now they're showing us this, right? So that's a really dangerous place to be. Bottom line is this: if you're going to take a quarterback, you want to do whatever is best for that quarterback. That's a big consideration. Zachary says, what's up, Pat? I haven't been this apathetic towards the Giants in my whole life. By the way, we know you're paying for the planes. Gary says, Pat, Mara should let Kafka coach their last few games, bro. Gary, I don't disagree with you. Simeon says, Slayton's diplomacy won't save his or anyone else's job. Joey B wants Shador. Yeah, so as we get close to the end of this chat, I want to tell you guys, I'll have this in the Daily News Monday on the website, but Isaiah Simmons talked a little bit about that Friday night meeting with Shador Sanders, him and Malik Neighbors, and he said this about Shador Sanders. This is Isaiah Simmons. He said, personally, I think he could come here and really transform things anywhere he goes. I think he's going to be a very, very valuable piece wherever he goes, kind of like a Jaden Daniels effect. You see what Jaden's done. I could see something like that happening with Shador as well, wherever he ends up, if he ends up here or wherever. I don't care who you put with Malik here in New York. Malik's going to do what Malik does. You see how many yards he has, how many different people have thrown him the ball this year. To me, it's pretty impressive. We've all seen how things have been going, so I think that's a true testament to Malik. So those are some of the comments about that. Milan says, now we're throwing the training staff under the bus. Montana says, are they sure the drones over New Jersey are not there to watch the Giants? James says, great podcast, Pat. Where do you rank nepotism on the list of Giants organizational issues? I definitely think when it comes to how their inner workings and decisions are made, I would put it's definitely in the top 3, right? Because it affects how they hire and who they hire. I do think that this Joe Schoen, Brian Daboll experiment was a true, sincere effort, though, from John Mara and from ownership to give more freedom and autonomy and an ability for your general manager and your new organizational kind of philosophy, an ability to kind of run it their way, right? Like you hired Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll and they were the outsiders, right? And it was kind of like, okay, now we're going to do it your way. We're going to follow your lead and we'll see where it goes from there. And, I think John Mara doesn't necessarily want to go away from the family model, go outside the family, makes that huge difference, and the sacrifice compared to the way that they have been running things in the past blows up in his face. So does he go back to that? Does he lean back more into who he's been, who they are? That's why I said, do they lean back into it and does Tim McDonald take over and continue to rise up the ranks and become the new face of the franchise? Or do they try to steer further clear of that nepotism and those accusations and the meddling accusations and could continue to go that way. I think as long as they own the team, they can do what they want with it, but it's fair to criticize them for how they've mismanaged it. Javi says, it hurts watching Saquon killing it at Philly like a gold jacket player while simultaneously watching his G-Men abomination. Hope is hard to find with the Giants right now. Francis says, it's not only Shane that evaluates talent, it's the scouts and assistant coaches, GMs, etc., that are poor. Get rid of that staff. John says, Vrabel is not coming here if Shane is here. You're only going to get OCs and DCs who aren't in demand with a GM whose foot is halfway out the door. All right, let's see. Looks like we got one more super chat here. Simeon says, Pat, would you consider John Robinson for the GM? Maybe, I guess if you were going to bring John Robinson and Vrabel as a pairing, I guess you could do that. I mean, John Robinson did draft Isaiah Wilson in the first round. Remember that. He drafted the tackle Isaiah Wilson in the first round, a guy who was a complete off-field disaster, never panned out as an NFL player, ended up on the Giants team when Judge and Gettleman were here. That is a horrific, horrifying, cautionary tale of player evaluation and scouting. So, all these guys, though, that we're talking about have skeletons in their closet or issues that we could discuss and poke holes in their resume. So that's one thing that jumps out to me is like they had some winning teams there, though, and they certainly knew how to build a team. And Vrabel was involved in that and a part of that. So I don't want to, discount the success they had there. But that's just something I think of. Right. He also drafted Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown. Yeah, exactly. No, for sure. And, at that time they had Tannehill, right? They ended up getting Tannehill and bringing in him who was a retread high pick and then forming a good roster and identity around him. And again, giving Vrabel the same credit we gave, to give John Robinson the same credit of they did assemble a tough team. They did pursue tough players, right? So yeah, listen, John Robinson would be one of the people you would interview for sure. Milan says, did Bill Belichick really mistake Brian Daboll for Brian Flores? Flores was actually a good coordinator for Bill, and Daboll was a tight end coach for him. Allegedly, allegedly he texted the wrong Brian. That's the allegations of the lawsuit. Yep. Guys, this has been a fantastic chat. Barb says, can we all chip in and pay to clone Josh Allen? Sure, Brian Daboll will go for that right now. Guys, this has been a tremendous Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard, post-game live, and it's all due to you guys, all due to you, the Talkin Ballers, the loyal supporters here on the PL on NFL YouTube channel and on the Believe Network. Remember, we are brought to you by MyBookie, Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, and Estate 98 Coffee. MyBookie, go to the link in my social media profile, go to the make your first deposit, use the promo code PATSPICKS, and get a 50% match on your first deposit up to $1,000. Those Justice Hill props, they hit so nicely today. So go MyBookie, bet anything, anytime, anywhere. Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink. Go to boomchaga.com. Go to the subscribe and save option. Order your first bag with the Talkin Ball 25 discount code or access it through that QR code on your screen. And you will get a 25% off your first order. So it's 25% off when you go your first bag on subscribe and save option. Use that QR code there or Talkin Ball 25, boomchaga.com. Start feeling the difference today. And Estate 98 coffee at estate98.com/Talkin Ball. Go to estate98.com/Talkin Ball. Get an exclusive offer for 80% off your first order. Good job by Hunter and some of our other followers getting that Jeremy Shockey answer in. Please direct message me your addresses so you can win that free bottle. Helps make a great espresso martini. Also makes you delicious iced or hot coffee in less than 10 seconds. 80% off that first order on estate98.com/Talkin Ball. And we're going to finish up with Jay Farry. He says, Pat, you have exposed so many lies in this organization. I don't want to talk about Joe Shane or Bozo anymore. What is your favorite food? And at the top of your Spotify. Favorite food? I love watermelon, even though it's not like a delicious dish or like a dinner or any entree. I love eating a fresh watermelon in the summer. Nothing like it. I would say I love a good eggplant or chicken parm. Love a good like swordfish. Love me some scallops. And, you guys know I like old fashions. And then at the top of my Spotify, I think the most noteworthy thing, I'm looking at my Spotify Wrapped. I listen to a lot of like instrumental, electronic, and and music in that realm. Like I have a playlist with Pretty Lights, the DJ, as like the headlining artist that I have a lot. I've added a lot of instrumental music to throughout the years that I write to. I started doing that when I was covering hockey, where I would be inside those loud arenas and I didn't want words in my ears with the music I was playing while I was writing. So I have Taranaki, Lex Cordet, Pear, Rye Hill, Kavinsky, let's see, Little People, and a lot of Pretty Lights and a bunch of other stuff in that playlist that basically get my mind going, keep my mind going. Minnesota. So, I listen to a lot of other music. I have an eclectic taste when it comes to music, but that's my favorite. Thank you guys for listening and watching. Simeon, Milan, Alex, Barb, everybody saying thank you so much. Jay, thank you for closing with that super chat. Our super chatters tonight: Daniel Saint, Daniel Hirsch, Steve Keys, Michael O'Brien, Big Brother Thunder, Joey B. Comedy, Milan Fan Club San Diego, Daniel Hirsch again, Mello, Simeon, Milan, and Jay Faries. Thank you all so much to you guys. Scorpio closes us with an important comment that speaks for us all. I don't even bother watching Giants games anymore. What's the point? Here's the point. I have a lot more exciting special announcements coming on Talkin Ball about Talkin Ball. So stay tuned. We'll do another live this week. I'll keep you updated on when that's happening. And I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Jump over now to Damon Amendolara's YouTube channel. I will be joining him now to talk NFL, Giants, and everything in between. See you guys next time. Thanks so much.